You may be asking, why is there a pillow in my seat? And that is because these chairs aren't quite tall enough for this desk.
I took a guess at that.
Okay.
I mean, I can see they're put on, the base is a makeshift pallet with wheels and a keg, couple kegs.
Yep.
Tempered glass has been purposely broke.
All stolen from local distributors.
Yes.
But statute of limitations is long gone. I stole these barrels probably 20 years ago when I got this glass. A friend of mine gave me this glass, and so I got these kegs and put it on. Yeah, I built this base myself. Yeah, turns out I'm handy.
Well, somebody just tried to buy some global kegs from us.
Global kegs.
Like the last year that we were in. That's the brand.
Right.
And I was like, as much as I'm annoyed with the bankruptcy and that they owe us some money, I can't sell them. Like, I can't. This is like bad juju to just sell them. Stealing them is one thing.
Right.
But selling them is bad juju.
No, I think stealing's much better than selling. Just write that down, Ethel, as a general rule. Biscuit, what do you think about that? Yeah, you have no opinion, as usual.
She's bored of me already.
Yeah, she is bored. Well, welcome, folks, to BeerNet Radio. This is your host, Harry Schuhmacher, and we have a special guest in the studio, Bud Dunn. Say hello, Bud.
Happy to be here, Harry. Thanks for having me.
And so, Bud and I, you're a former beer wholesaler, AB.
Reformed.
Reformed, right? And we've known each other for a while, and it's weird because you and I are friends, I would say.
I would love to call you a friend. Yes, okay. I would say the same thing.
I went out on a limb there. I mean, on air.
It was an inquisitive tone.
No pressure. But, and I don't make new friends. I quit making friends like in 2005, 2007 maybe. And you came after that, and I was like, I make certain exceptions. And then I thought we were friends. And then you tell me last week, you would start talking to somebody else about being a pilot. And I'm like, I almost interrupted and go, you have the wrong Bud Dunn. It turns out you are a pilot.
I mean, come on, I'm a rich white beer distributor.
Oh, right. Yes. Now we're getting somewhere.
I'm also good at golf.
Yeah, right.
Pilot.
Yeah.
And I have a beautiful blonde wife.
Yeah. Oh, you got it all, man. You're hitting on all cylinders.
Sarah's going to hate that part.
Yeah, she will. She will. Well, tell us a little bit, in case our listeners don't know, your history up in Battle Creek, Michigan, and how your kind of time in the beer industry and now what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I ran my family's beer distributorship the last 15 years. We sold in October of last year, so about a year ago now. And, as part of that, I moved into a new role. But, born and bred out of beer, grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. My family owned a distributor for 90 years. My step-grandfather started it. Actually, fun fact, licenses in Michigan start and end on May 1st every year. Mm-hmm. And that happens to be my birthday.
Really?
Yes. Yep. So we were license number, I have this in my basement now. I did keep this after the sale. It's I think it's license number 31 out of all of the state of Michigan in May 1st, 1933. And that was when the company was founded, ran it for 90 years as a family, and we recently exited. So as part of that exit, bittersweet, miss my team and everything I did day to day, but awesome, exciting experience now where I run a business called VxP, Volume Times Profit. We're a sales analytics tool for beer distributors. So I get to work on all the fun stuff that I loved about running a beer distributor. I don't have to worry about drivers not showing up anymore, punching customers, swearing at customers, doing all those kind of challenging things that we as beer distributors do cope with on a day-to-day running these things.
Well, it is. I think that's why we were friends, because you seemed interested in the technology. You're kind of a nerd. Let's just say it.
That is a very kind way to say it.
Right.
Yes.
and so am I. So yeah, I like that part of the business too. Maybe if somebody else is thinking about selling, what kind of decision tree do you go down on that?
Ooh, that's tough. So, for me, we were sandwiched between two larger wholesalers, both with anointed next-gen leaders, people who were my contemporary age group and were already working in the business, going to the MBWA events, participating in all the lobby things, the things that you should be doing as a next-generation leader, as a wholesaler. And for us to acquire somebody organically just was not going to be in the cards for the design and what we had laid out. So, what I talked about with my family was I just didn't see myself running a wholesaler deep into my 60s and 70s. And with the size and scale we were, I thought it made sense to own our own destiny, is what I would explain to my mom or to my dad and my grandmother. Those were the three of us that all own the company together. And the objective at the end of the day was, hey, we can own our own destiny here, make a decision, make a logical, business-focused decision first, and kind of deal with the aftermath of the challenges that all the personal stuff, the people that work for you for 35 years, the timing, effort, and love of the community that we all invest into. Every beer distributor gives back a ton to their community, not only economically with the gifting and with the monetary side, but also, we're 22 people working for us. That's 22 families, and all living locally and, contributing back to the community and the society. So all of those kind of non-economic things came secondary and from the business case decision of that. I just think it's the right time to own our own destiny, given all the things that are out there, and really a personal choice that I made as the anointed next gen leader of I just don't see a long-term future for my personal stake in the organization long-term.
Right. I think a lot of families are going through that same kind of decision network because you're either acquiring or getting acquired. I mean, there's no kind of sitting still. Even with franchise laws, the suppliers can make it hard on you if they want to. But
some of the economics are tough too. I saw a future where, we ran a really good, efficient business, and that cost curve and that profit curve, really better said, that profit curve I saw as potentially flattening, and that cost curve getting steeper, with inflation and everything else, and particularly the labor side. The labor side is the part that's catching us beer distributors more than anything else. And that labor side is going to continue to close in. And I just got worried that a future where that would get too thin, and that return on effort, return on investment, return on capital from all the stuff that you learn in business school and all the nerd things that you learn to do, it's just I just didn't make a lot of sense on paper anymore for me from a really, really stark, hard-nosed business decision.
It's getting tougher out there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just in my little business, you're right, the price increases we take don't really cover the cost increases. And it's just the same for the general beer industry too. When I got in the business in 91 working for a wholesaler, how old are you?
I'm 38.
Oh, you're younger than I thought. So
it's the gray beard,
Yeah, right.
We were recently on a cruise with my lovely wife, and we're sitting down at dinner. And next door, a little quick story. And right next to us is another older couple, and they stumble upon in the conversation how old we are. And the woman looks at Sarah. Same woman looks back at me, and she says, "You look way older than she is." And we're a year and a half apart. I'm like, I know. How lucky am I?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get this with Millicent. It used to be people just thought I was her dad. But now they think I'm her granddad. We've gotten that before from waiters and stuff.
That's tough. I don't think you're worthy of that.
No, I don't think so. You were weren't you high up or kind of a mover and shaker in the MBWA board when they started the next gen?
Shortly after that.
After.
Adam Vitale was the next gen group chair to start with.
That's right.
He kind of helped. He was on the board when that group was formed and kind of launched the group because he's such good looking and so smart and so well dressed.
Yes.
They thought they'd loop back around with me.
Yeah.
And when
they wanted to go the ogre route.
They wanted to go the other way. And when I stood up in the back and was in, you do these things where you get 50 or 60 beer distributors in a room and you're trying to do some kind of break the ice event, which is what they want you to do because you're going to meet a group of new people from all around the country. It's an incredible experience. So I stand up in the back and, as Travis Markstein was the chair at the time, and he had asked me to join to be the next gen chair. So I stood up in the back, which is where I belong, and said, "Hi, my name's Bud. Travis picked me because, I wear the flannel shirts, and I got the beard, and I can kind of float in and out. You don't know if I'm a brewer or a distributor, and I can kind of meander around a different people in the industry really quickly. It's more of a chameleon thing." It was a joke that I said. So.
Yeah. That's another thing I didn't have was the next gen. So, did those meetings help you to be able to talk to other people
For sure.
around the country.
For sure. And you learn a big experience about like what it means to be a beer distributor and why we do what we do. It's particularly like legislatively and what we're trying to do from an advocacy side with the business in Washington, but also at our state level. Because a lot of what MBWA is doing is sharing best practices back and forth between different state legislation, because so much of the actual action that goes on in legislation is going to be state-based regulation because of the Constitution. And
That's
our,
right.
And our amendments. So, that's part of the deal. But to experience that was a ton of fun. And I also had the opportunity to serve on our Michigan Beer and Wine Board at the exact same time as the MBWA board. So I was able to kind of see the state-based stuff and very focused legislative agenda, and then the federal stuff too.
Right. I don't know if this is true now, but I remember a few years ago talking with Craig Purser about that he was worried that the younger upcoming generation of wholesalers wasn't as dogmatically concerned about three-tier law and franchise law than their parents were. You think that's changed now, or are they starting to get it or not?
Constellation terminating a couple people in California changed the messaging for sure. Right. And I would identify with that. I think the younger generations of anything have a challenge of like, we don't understand how difficult it was because we didn't experience some of these issues. We didn't get blanket terminations, or we didn't get told, hey, like, I know that you're a Stroh's distributor, but like, you can't have this, Miller Lite or Coors Light or Bud Light in this same warehouse. It might infect the Stroh's beer. So you have to build a wall in between these two. So we didn't experience some of that craziness back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, really before franchise protection came out, which happened in Michigan in the mid-80s. Mm-hmm. So, that piece of the puzzle, we just don't know that. So I can identify with that, but you see something happen like that, and it's like, ooh, we should wake up to this. We should get hip to this really fast.
Right.
For sure.
My father was a G. Hallman distributor, which in Texas included Lone Star, which at one time was a pretty big brand. But then in Houston, there were a Schlitz distributor, a Bud distributor, a Miller distributor, and then him, the G. Hallman. Yeah. And then when Coors came in, you would have thought they would have gone with one of those four. No, they wanted a new-to-world distributor.
Brand new person.
Yeah, and he ended up being very good friends with Manny Sanchez, who ended up being that person. But he was crestfallen. I mean, that was going to be his lifeline because G. Hallman was just doing this. Yeah. And Miller Lite was doing this, and Bud Light wasn't even around yet. But it was that's why he sold. That's honestly why he got out of the business. Was he sold the brand rights because it was just after franchise law, so he was able to get something for the brand rights. But otherwise, he would have gotten nothing. Yeah. I mean, if maybe inventory.
And it is nice because we have that shared investment, shared brand equity in the brands. And when we go out and invest in marketing and selling and actually doing all the placements and all the effort, it's nice to, from a wholesaler's perspective, we can invest in that equity to actually have a return on that investment if you go to sell the brand someday or sell the business. And not enough craft brewers really appreciate that extra effort, particularly because some of these guys, like, we're making, 23 to 24, 25% margin on this. And then our larger brewers are usually a bigger margin, particularly in the kegs and draft, where we're taking a lower margin on these craft products. Mm-hmm. We're getting good money. There's good GP per case.
Right, absolute dollars are good.
Absolute dollars are great, but that margin is a little bit lower. So we have to kind of I think we have to think through with our smaller brewers on a more regular basis, the shared investment here is a deal, and it's something that we want to have collaboratively together for sure.
Well, I don't think everybody agrees with that sentiment. The shared investments.
That's okay.
It's a different. Some suppliers, most suppliers get it, I would say, and some don't. So, were you a Monster distributor?
I was, yes, or we were.
You were, and how did losing that affect you?
It was tough. It was when was that? It was 2014, I think it was, and we had about a $2.5 million operation on our non-alcoholic side. So that was Monster, Arizona, and a handful of other things that we were selling and making really good profitability on it. And when that gets stripped out, it was probably about 40% of the total profitability, but about 20%, 23% of the total business from a revenue. So it was a good profitable piece. The fortunate thing is that we were kind of able to downsize and reconfigure some staffing around. We actually did lay off one person in that process and redeploy, people in different ways. So that was the big hard part about it. The other piece of the puzzle too is that like we wanted to find a way to try to reinvest, but I just couldn't put the pieces together. And I remember having this discussion with my dad around like, well, we should take this termination buyout and we should reinvest in these other non-alcoholic brands. And I put in my MBA hat and I grabbed out a little pie chart. And it was like, hey, bro, because that's dad, bro.
Right.
It's like, hey, bro, like this is Monster, this is Red Bull, this is Rockstar, 5 Hour, like everything else. And then you work your way all the way back around that like Coke or Pepsi owns, which is a ton of stuff. And I don't remember everything at the time. And there's this little like 8 or 9% sliver of this all others. So if we got 8 or 9% of the whole market, which would be 20 or 30 suppliers, if not more, we would do an eighth or a tenth of what we did with Monster and would probably not make any more money per case than what we did already. So like it's a net negative across the board. So we just kind of like threw our hands up at the end of it. It was like, we're not going to get back into it. We're totally out of it and just go back into beverage alcohol and just be beer. And we were doing wine at the time, a little bit of wine too.
So y'all got out of alcohol, non-alcohol altogether.
Completely. Yep.
Yeah.
Completely. I didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Because you do have to have at least one brand that's scaling.
And you need
a Red
big
Bull
brand, yes.
A big brand or, and I feel bad. Wholesalers have gotten burned over. A lot of Red Bull wholesalers have obviously gotten burned when they pull that. And then Celsius going to Pepsi, and then you've got C4 going to Dr. Pepper. And what's left? Alani Nu. I mean,
yeah,
it's a tough business. But Ghost is doing well. And, I get, if you're getting it from AB, you might as well run with it.
For sure. Or one of your big suppliers, you might as well run with it. You're more protected, probably not going to have as many challenges from a termination side. But for any young, beverage entrepreneurs out there, if you want to be a billionaire, develop a good brand in the non-alcoholic space, partner with beer distributors, put 1x GP in your contract, talk us all into doing it, and then terminate all of us at one time and sell to Coke, Pepsi, or Monster.
Right.
Like, we mint billionaires as a network really, really well.
Yes. That is a great point. Wow, Bud. That is you do. Build it on the backs of wholesalers. Let them build the brand. Yep. Give them no value back. 1x.
1x. Right. And move on to the next
and
one.
Move on.
And, and to take a page out of Bang. What was that guy's name?
Jack Owak.
Yeah, to take a name. But and when we got Bang, so like we didn't have Bang. And then we got Bang. And I called another wholesaler manager, like, I don't know how we're going to get hosed on this, but I already know we're going to. I can't tell you how yet. I can't. And because there's like 17 different ways that I could think about it happening. One way I didn't think about it happening was that Celsius would take it upon themselves to, take it as rightfully so, to take it as an opportunity to exit to Pepsi and replace, hey, the Bang guy's driving you nuts. He's leaving. He's going to the beer distributors. We don't love that. You don't love that you're using Bang. Why don't we just flip-flop?
Right.
A genius move on their part, by the way, too.
Right. Yeah, Bang. That's the gift that kept on giving when that guy, just his implosion was so public.
It's part of the media. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was so predictable, too. And you'd be like, you'd see him make these mistakes in public, and you're like, no, don't say that. No. And now the irony is that Monster owns the brand. It's kind of sad what they did to that guy. They just obliterated him, but
I think they would say he deserved it.
Yeah, I think they would. I just miss him as entertainment, and the trial was incredible. I hired Bianca because she covered that trial for someone else.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you come work here.
Yeah.
I want more. I want somebody that can cover it that well. Because let's just face it, the beer industry is 75% lawyering. It's just lawsuit after lawsuit. Some are big, some are small.
Some are fun, some are sad.
Some are sad. At any given month, there's at least one lawsuit that we report on that's being either filed or updated. We've got Congo Brands suits going on, and there's just a lot. You have to. That's why we hired Bianca. She's a legal reporter. Yeah. She had no experience in beer. You can teach beer, You know, it's harder to teach law, especially because I was the legal reporter before that, you know, and I do pride myself. I could download a 60-page lawsuit and tell you what it's about in about 10 minutes.
Well, now
Pretty
you
well.
don't even need to do that. You just load it up into ChatGPT
Yeah,
and have it read it to you.
right, and then just be terrified if they got something wrong, and you.
That's what retractions are for.
Yeah, right.
There's a systematic approach to solve that.
You know, that you make a good point. ChatGPT probably has fewer errors than I do on any given day. So, but yeah, it's lawfare. We've
On
got a
that,
lot of it.
One last thing on that, like, non-alcoholic game. Like, the disappointing thing as an industry is that, like, you don't have, and maybe somebody does out there, has a good example, but you don't have, like, a really solid example of, like, that case study of somebody who really had the opportunity to exit the brand to a big financial backer and didn't do that.
Right.
And I think the challenge at the end of the day is the economics are so big.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so big for the supplier, and rightfully so, because they do generate and create a lot of value for themselves. And my, position around this, and when I talk to clients or I talk to anybody else, it's like we have to find a better ratio of what our value is from a termination fee for that. And
Right.
we have to do a better job negotiating for that. It's more than 1, less than 10.
Right.
It still should be a reasonable number, because you can't
Right.
make it so high that it's crippling that you can't transition.
Then let's
the
just
brands
say
out.
4.
I mean, you could do that.
Let's just
too.
say 4. Why
Yep.
don't we just set the standard right now?
And-
Because the problem is that distributors don't stick with each other. You know, it's like everybody in the States, like, all right, we got to demand 4. And then there's always one guy saying, I'm going to do 1. And then the supplier, says,
They
well,
pay
he's
off each
doing
other,
1.
Yeah. They play off each other.
Yeah, and it may not even be legal for wholesalers to collude on that. I don't take my advice, but I mean, there at least should be. I mean, it probably is legal. It's just there should be a standard, for. Right now, the standard is too low, and I did notice that on D9 beverages, wholesalers are going in with a higher number and saying, let's set that standard for
Yes.
this class of beverage, especially since it's going to be regulated. And so that, the part of the multiple is because it's a regulated beverage and you have a license that you're protecting, and the supplier is borrowing your license as a wholesaler.
Yep.
And that's value, right?
For sure.
That's why non-alc, I guess, don't proceed. But wait, I the up and down the street business, beer wholesalers are just unmatched. They're undefeated.
And we need to find a way why the network of beer distributors in general, when I say the network, the whole group, the reason why we feel more confident in defending or advocating for a termination fee that's higher in D9 or any of the THC beverage drink category is because we have a bigger risk. Like,
Right.
we are risking a federal basic permit or a lot of unknowns, so we feel much more comfortable saying, hey, this is what I need to make this happen.
All right.
When you're negotiating on the non-alcoholic side, you've got to find that same kind of institutional reason as to why you're looking for that.
Right.
And you got to find a way that you can kind of like negotiate around the direction as to why. And we haven't found a good way to do that yet as a
No.
group.
No, it's tough, especially with that segment having slotting fees and buying coolers, and there's just a lot of extra stuff, taking credit in some cases.
Yep.
So when you think back on, so AB was by far your main
For sure.
supplier, and let's talk about some breakthroughs that AB had. What did you think when Doc Otis came out?
Oh, so I was a teenager when Doc
All right.
Otis came out.
So it was right up your alley.
I may or may not have tried some, may or may not have sampled some.
Mm-hmm.
And Tequila came second, right? Or was Doc Otis the recreation of Tequila?
I cannot. Yeah, because Tequila was kind of a quasi hit, right? Or maybe not in Battle Creek, but
Again, like, not necessarily in the right age bracket yet.
okay.
To participate.
I forget how young
fully.
you are. I mean, I had 3 children by the time Tequila came out.
But I do remember it, and the Doc Otis thing, FMB, kind of before its time and missed the boat. And like, at the end of the day, right, it only missed the boat because of the can.
Right.
Like, we put everything into a bottle because we thought that was what Mom wine cooler wanted,
Right.
and it like didn't even catch until everything got in a can. Even White Claw, like, you talk to these clients and these wholesalers that had White Claw, it's like, we're throwing away everything that's in a bottle. And they were like, please take my cans.
Yeah.
Please take the cans. Please try them. And then they do, and the rest is history.
Right. Isn't it amazing how the can has progressed to the preeminent package? Because when I got in the business, it was all bottles. I mean, you only sold cans in 24 packs and 30 packs. You know, it was a 12-pack bottle was the number one package at the time, and then 18 bottles, and then it's just got too heavy, and the sustainable part. You know, I remember J.V. Sharman when he was still with New Belgium, and this is probably 20 years ago, and we were out at my ranch out here driving around in the Jeep, and he's like, we were drinking, and he squished the can. He goes, cans are so great. You can just crush them and put them in your backpack. And I was like, he goes, can is going to be the future of beer. Everything is going to be canned, even craft. And I was like, really? Really? And of course,
like
once again, I was wrong.
I feel like there's a great, that Larry David commercial about what was it, Bitcoin?
Yeah,
it was
FTX.
We could recreate that.
Yeah.
And, you could play Larry David, and we could go through a series of innovations in the beer industry.
No, I think that's what we're doing right now. And it's true.
This is just one part of the skit.
I missed all of it. I thought, Smirnoff Ice, that's not going to work. But boom, still a huge brand.
Yes, still a huge brand. So, like, Doc Otis comes out, Tequila comes out, we try it. It doesn't really work. We don't really find our way into that FMB category at scale, really, at our operation until Lime-A-Rita. Once the Ritas hit, that became like a jam. And obviously in a can, too, right? 8-ounce can. And then that kind of struggle bust. And then my dad was like, hey, the brewery really wants us to have all these 8-ounce cans of Bud Light, and Michelob Ultra. I'm like, yeah, I know. And he's like, well, like, we should get in that. I'm like, I'm not making any money on them, so there's no reason, in my opinion, why we should. And he's like, well, why do you think they're doing it then? And I said, because somebody with an MBA like me bought a huge canning line of 8 ounces, and now 3 years later, they're not selling as much 8 ounces, so what do you got to do? You got to fill the 8-ounce can.
Right. Yeah, they probably bought 3 years worth of cans, on futures or something. Exactly. And they're like, yeah, we got to, hey, you're going to love this in an 8-ounce can. This is great for the ladies or whatever. And in South Texas, they call them whorehouse beers.
In Michigan, Midwesterners practice beers.
Okay, practice beers.
Take.
Y'all are so nice. We're just so jaded down here. Okay, so we're at Lime-A-Rita. Now, when did Michelob Ultra come out? That was
the early part of the 2000s.
And when did it really start taking off, like, in your market?
Yeah, didn't they have a sophomore slump? Was like 2002, 2003, I think. Was kind of the sophomore slump. And, I remember going to one of the meetings and, looking at it from a sales rate of sale, and they were talking about the sophomore slump and everything. But our team was always really excited about it because it was a new thing. My dad came into the business right when Bud Light was launching. It was like, hey, we can take advantage of this and really move the needle on it. As far as like really picking up speed, where it like really started to matter, probably in 2008, 9, 10, was where it like really started to like pay some dividends, and it became, doubled so many times. It became like a serious brand. And then, down here in Texas, in the Southeast, it was always like, how do we get Ultra in Michigan from, the 3 share that it was in 2018 and 19 into the 7, 8, 9 share that it was at the same time period. And now it's like a 10 share or 13 share. Well, somewhere between 10 and 12 probably down here now. And still trying to kind of build that back up and find that share piece. And once we kind of got on this wavelength of profitability and we want to premiumize our market more strategically with the sales reps, it became like this easy thing of like talking to reps about selling Ultra or talking to reps about building big displays of Ultra, and strategically using it just became like a thing of the past. It was just like, we don't need to coach them into it. We show them the information, tell them why it's important to them and how it makes money for them, and they would do the rest.
Right. It's amazing when a brand hits that equation, that scale, and the profitability is there, then it just, I remember when Red Bull came out, and it had, at the time, was a huge margin, which was like $8 gross margin. And, and I remember in my speeches at state associations around the country, I'd say, look, like if you're building a new brand, a craft brand, make the $8 margin, and wholesalers will run through a wall for you. You don't have to do all this other bullshit, go into sales meetings and PO. do the margin.
Yep.
Margin sells beer. And I think,
Look at Beatbox.
Beatbox, exactly.
Is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Carbless.
Yeah.
Some of these other new entrants that have come into the game from basically out of left field.
Yeah.
And are new industry members, never been in the industry before. They didn't know the rule book in some way, shape, or form. You just had the Carbless guy on a couple episodes ago. It was funny to listen to him talk about his cheese experience where, I'm going to give you a discount if you buy this much. And then all the beer guys were like, that's not how it works, bro.
Yeah.
And
not even sure that's legal, but
it probably is in certain markets.
Yeah, maybe. Sounds like consignment
sales.
A little bit. Maybe.
Legal and frowned upon and fast and loose are all just some different,
Yeah.
We don't have an attorney tell us what's illegal or not. We really want to understand what's fast and loose and what's kind of frowned upon.
You're right. You're so right, Bud. I mean, you could make a pretty decent case that merchandising is illegal.
For sure.
I mean, it's a value to a retailer that's over $1.
Value in retailer.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So
these people have come in and they have found their way, heart of the wholesaler through profitability. And it's all incremental profit. It's a new category. It's a new business that they haven't really, it's not really cannibalizing anything else they're doing. I mean, you could make an argument that depending on the portfolio structure of each wholesaler, Carbless could be something different.
Mm-hmm.
But Beatbox is completely synthetic. It's all synthetic profit where you're not really cannibalizing much else in your portfolio.
What do you mean by synthetic profit?
So when I say synthetic profit, it's most of that money is gonna all fall to your bottom line. If you're adding Ultra, you're cannibalizing from something else in your business some way, shape, or form. But if you're adding a whole new segment, some non-alcoholics are this way, Beatbox is definitely this way. There's nothing to really compete against. Oh, here's another great one. Fireball Malt. For our business, at Atlas is $22 a case, and GP per CE. That is all synthetic profit that goes right to the bottom line. It's just a different version. It's like it's like credit default swaps in a big short. It's like this is all synthetic money. We just juice it up and fire it to the moon. So all that $21 basically falls to the bottom line.
Right, you're not taking anything away from your other brands, or very little. Nope. And those are unicorn products, really. You're in Michigan. Is it true that there's a Michelob Golden Ale that sells
just outside of our market?
Oh, okay.
It's actually through more of the Corn Belt. So it'd be like Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, Iowa, that really kind of north central of the U.S. is where that Michelob Golden Draft is.
Yeah, Michelob Golden Draft. Yeah. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Why? MGD, I think was
big
popular.
MGD state.
Yeah. They just like their shit in a clear bottle. Or whatever,
I did get to have it for the first. Have you ever had it?
I had it in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis.
Yep. It's very good. It's the first time I ever had to have it, or ever got to have it, was earlier this year. It's an incredible beer.
AB doesn't make any bad beers, I don't think.
Well, all the brewers make incredible products. I think the challenge that the business has right now is that we've seen from an innovation standpoint is that we've seen all these big brewers spend billions of dollars in valuation, not in raw dollars, but hundreds of millions of dollars in acquiring all these high-end craft brands, which now they basically have financial engineered off their balance sheet.
Right.
And
totally written them off.
Written them off. Yep. Which only a big business like that, the publicly traded, can handle something like that.
Right.
And same thing. And all three of them have. AB's done it. Molson Coors has done it. And Constellation has done it. So everybody's kind of had a black eye on this. Mm-hmm. And where we go next is you think about Athletic, momentum brand, that screws his exit to a big brewer because who from the board is going to allow that kind of an acquisition to take place at that kind of a multiple. I just don't know how they get that across the finish line at the board level again.
Because they've been burned so recently.
Maybe. I mean, and not here. Athletic deserves a place at the table and everything. And Bill is an incredible leader, as you've said, and you've interviewed him before. I got to meet him a couple weeks ago in the back of Ohio. So he deserves everything he has, but I just don't know where that exit comes from him.
Right.
With that backdrop.
Right.
Of a problem.
Right. The board members are still there. And from the last debacle, Constellation lost $1 billion, and that's probably what Athletic would want, somewhere around that number.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of weird that Dr. Pepper has a stake in Athletic.
That too, yeah.
So
Like he'll manage this really well, and maybe we'll look back in like 3 or 4 years and be like, hey, this is fresh. Where Tilray just picked up all of the Molson Coors brands and basically all of the AB brands, and that 3 or 4 years from now, Athletics is a different machine. The whole category has grown to what he thinks it's going to become, which would be incredible for the beer industry as a whole too. Then it's probably a horse of a different color at that point too. You really make the argument that at that point, I think the argument gets made that, hey, we were too early the last time around and we overpaid because there was a feeding frenzy. This is clearly a diamond that has really grown up, and this is a horse of a different color.
yeah,
And it's a worth and worthy of the valuation that it has now.
right. Especially since it's a market leader in that category, and the category seems to have continued legs. I don't think it's a trend, in other words. I mean, do you think it's a trend? There's a lot of people that surprisingly think it's just a flash in the pan, talking about non-alc beer.
I'm not that marketer mindset. I'm an operator and, really good at like operating wholesalers or teaching wholesalers how to like run their sales teams more efficiently and focusing on that. I'm not smart enough to pick winners and losers on the brand side.
I mean, I am smart enough to do that, but I always get it wrong. So maybe.
Should there be a fade trade?
I think I feel like I'm smart enough, but in actuality, yeah, there should be a trade on my decisions or predictions.
Yep.
Like the Pelosi, like you can trade like
the inverse Pelosi.
Yeah, the inverse Pelosi. That's what we'll call it.
Nobody would ever trade the inverse Pelosi. They would trade the inverse Kramer, though.
Yes, right.
I think that is a thing too.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
I do.
Kramer is. How can you get it wrong so many times and that be your job?
And he keeps doing it. Well, I mean, he's more like the weatherman, maybe, than the stock picker.
He's just entertaining. That's why nobody takes him serious. I hope people don't take him too seriously. Well, let's talk about your new life, because you just mentioned that you like talking to wholesalers about how to improve their sales and the sales efficiency. Tell me how you're doing that through Excel Pro. We got it here, folks. Excel Pro.
Excel Pro. VxP, volume times profit. This is now my new focus.
So volume
Excel
times
Pro.
profit. Let me. I'm not great at math, but let me do that equation in my head. So volume times profit equals net profit.
More money.
It means more money.
Yep. That's the objective, for sure.
More volume, more profit.
More volume, more profit. So, when we, at Atlas, to tell a little bit of backstory, at Atlas, we launched this product, VxP, in 2019. And I became obsessed with the way that it changed our business. And it became more of a cult and a culture as much as it is a technology. So what it does is that we expose the reps to the profitability that sits behind the scenes from what they see in their normal sales reports in whatever tool they're using. A lot of volume centric, a lot of revenue centric on those sales reports. But we want to expose them to profitability. So fun things happen. You can see that, hey, Ultra over Bud Light, Michelob Ultra over other packages.
Right.
Miller Lite or Keystone, certain packages intra-brand are more profitable than others. So you can influence shopper behavior and understand that, hey, if I move 3 to 5% of my shoppers in Keystone from a 30-pack to a single serve, that I could incrementally increase my profit by 20 or 30 cents a case. That's why, salesperson, we want you to have that cooler sticker of single serves at that gas and convenience or that C-store, because there's a reason for it. It becomes silent hand. We're letting the business and the data work for itself and marrying with where the reps' incentive packages lie and what they're incentivized to sell.
Right. Because, I'm just thinking about when you're like a pre-salesman or a salesperson, and, I think when you're in the industry a long time, you're like, of course there's more margin in Michelob Ultra than there is Busch Light. But when you're just getting into that role, you don't know that. Like you don't really think about that at all. At least when I was doing it, it was volume. Volume. We didn't even look at pricing. Now at least some people look at revenue, but But really, yeah, the gross margin, and it differs between package on the same brand even a lot.
A lot, yes.
And so knowing that when you're, I guess, dividing your focus, right? Everybody always says the salesperson's focus is the most important thing, right? How do you get their focus? And I talked about, I'm getting a little off topic, but I talked about a man named Manny Sanchez earlier, who was the Coors distributor in Houston, and he later had like Longview and other things. And I remember him telling me once, he was kind of a mentor of mine, but he said, why do beer wholesalers allow a supplier to come in and create incentive programs for the wholesalers' salespeople? He goes, a lot of times they come in and they're wanting to sell the product that makes me the least money.
Manny and I would be friends.
You would. You would. So you can design incentive programs around this, or how does that work? Like how does a wholesaler actually use the product?
Yeah, so we mirror your route accounting system. We create almost a digital twin of what your route accounting system is. And then from there, we actually flood our system with a bunch of sales analytics around what reps should or shouldn't be focusing on. There's some AI built into that too. And the whole process is like the system does a really nice job, because when you were 20, so long ago,
right?
So long ago, the average wholesaler had what, 2 or 3 suppliers, 15 or 20 SKUs.
Right.
Now we've got, and your reps were probably seeing 10 accounts a day, 9.
Yeah.
Like,
and we do like 25-cent discount every other week.
Yeah. So like there was a fairly organized process to it, and it was a much narrower SKU portfolio with not a lot of variability on the volume side nor on the profit side. Right. Now your average beer distributor has 50 suppliers, almost 4,000 SKUs. And when we present that complex book of business to a sales rep to go then sell, it's how do we help them break that down when us managers, us smart people, are not in the room.
Right.
And that's the end of the day. What we're trying to do is help the reps break down what I should be focusing on now, what I should be doing next, and why I should be focusing on that. Through either a revenue lens, a profit lens, and then always a volumetric lens too. So there's always a volume component of this too. Because, volume by itself, if we only focus on volume, probably get weird results. If you only focus on and suboptimal. If you only focus on profit, you get weird results and suboptimal. Same thing with revenue. That's why the two need to go together in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Okay. Like AB distributors have that. What's their software called? WPN or not WPN?
Talking about mobility.
Mobility.
Yeah. Or All Connect, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. Mobility, and then Molson Coors has one. And how does it interact with that?
It layers in with what they're doing. Okay. So it's a sales and strategy management tool, kind of sits alongside, adjacent to what the sales reps are doing. So the sales reps are going out every day in their CRM tool, whatever their ordering tool is. So these are my customers, these are my route, this is what I got to order every day. And then VxP is, this is what I got to focus on. So what's next, and how am I doing? And this is my tactics side of the day. I got to go see 18 accounts, I got to see 25 accounts. And we coach the reps on how to actually, apply strategy at scale. How do they grow their business strategically? There's a ton of education that we give to the team leads or the area sales managers too. And this becomes a whole profit culture around this whole institution. And, yes, the technology plays a role, but that is more of a role of supporting the feedback loop, shortening the feedback loop, because they get a daily update every single day of how they're doing, how they've been doing month to date, and how they're going to do, because we give them some projections too. And that kind of daily feedback is what the technology is all about. And then the culture side is all the training, education, and what you do with it too. If you make the most of it, like my favorite story is that we had JV, love Jared. We had a big market in our wholesaler. It was single serve. 25-ounce cans were 35% of our business by volume.
Damn.
Not necessarily profitable on the outside, right? I mean, making $2 a case in GP per CE on Bud Ice, not something we're going to take home a ton of money.
I'm always watching you, Bud Ice.
It's still good. Was the last beer I had on closing day at Atlas Sales in our market too.
Bud Ice?
25-ounce can.
Nice.
Pull it right out of the cooler. Everybody was sitting around. Quick pit stop. Our sales manager, Tommy, was people were coming in. I mean, we were kind of reminiscing, licking our wounds, and kind of that we were shutting down the business. That day was our last day of going out to the market. And Tommy was reaching across, just like, shaking people's hands and be like, thanks for everything you've done. You're fired today.
Here's a Bud Ice to make it feel better.
We have a very eclectic crew. I call us the Motley Crew. There's a very, very, very specific person that worked at Atlas. You had to have a specific kind of view on life for sure to survive.
Oh, good.
So Bud Ice, back to the store point. So Bud Ice, Jared Van Nortwick, $2 a case in GP per CE. And these guys were always hounding me about, when are we going to get more inventory in if we're out of stock? Or, oh my God, we're going to go a price increase. What is going to happen when we do a price increase? All my volume is going to go down on Bud Ice because, I'm paid on volume. I'm focusing on volume. That's what I want to do. It became this like doom loop. Mm-hmm. As soon as we showed them through VxP the GP per CE on New Belgium, it became, on the 19.2s, it became I'm going to manage my Bud Ice business to the best of my capability, and I'm going to focus on my 19.2 business. And I'm going to focus on Ultra. And I'm going to focus on my higher ends. And we, in the same year, grew and managed a slight growth on Bud Ice, 25-ounce cans. And we're the only wholesaler in the state of Michigan that grew New Belgium. Everybody else declined. Right. And we grew New Belgium. So that's like one example of a story of why I'm obsessed with what I do now.
Right. And do you travel around the country visiting wholesalers?
I do get an opportunity to travel, get an opportunity to be in the trade all the time with reps, do the same things that I was doing before, been in some very interesting markets and some very interesting places on a regular basis too. I was in the south side of Chicago earlier this year. I was in Gary, Indiana earlier this year. One of the fun facts about Gary, have you ever heard of these things? They're called bank stores.
No.
You've been in one more than likely.
I'll let you know if I have.
It's when you go in, and it's like, instead of a normal C-store, it's set up like a bank. You walk in, all the customers are in a 12 by 12 area.
Yes.
Behind bulletproof glass.
Yes, I have been in several banks. Yes, I didn't know that's what they were called.
I had never heard them called a bank store before.
A bank store. Yeah, they sell a hell of a lot of beer at bank stores.
They do.
Yeah.
And then we pick on, to pick on the suppliers for a second, like they see these big volume, drops at these big bank stores, and then they come in and they're like, they look at all their analytics and they're like, well, we should have this and this and this and this here. It's like, bro, like, it's a bank store. You can't even shop the store. There's no incremental purchase. Like, we have to. You
can't merchandise it like it's.
The store's the store. So we try to meet reps where they're at with that kind of soup of challenges. And like, these are the things you can work on. These are the things you can really make a difference on. And these are the things we kind of have to manage.
Yeah, there's always exceptions, right?
For sure.
To everything. Like I remember, like the Heineken rep was complaining about kind of hot bar that you would think Heineken would do well in, and why I wasn't doing well then. And I was like, well, the road in front of it has been under construction for 6 months. You can't even get into it, Can't
even go inside.
I mean, just shit like that you can't read on a spreadsheet, but there's always exceptions. Spooky Dude knows all about that.
For sure. Yeah. And then the only other thing we're doing with VxP, not to make it too much of a sales pitch, the only other thing we're doing that's a lot of fun is that we're starting to bring in that execution-based targeting too. So you have that best of both worlds where you've got the silent hand is working for clients out in the trade to organically grow profitability when we're not telling people what to do. And hey, these are strategic initiatives that the business has to get done. We have 50 supplier partners. We have to get these things done. You can bring a way to actually target specific initiatives all the way down to the route level.
Like, it's Halloween now, so pumpkin beer.
Well, dude, pumpkin beer, it's like we're moving on from pumpkin beer in a hot minute. Like, we've been on pumpkin beer since the end of July.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, Jim Cook has been sending us Oktoberfest and pumpkin beer since July 23rd.
Yeah.
Every single year now for what?
Because the worst thing you could do is have it in November, Because, I love this business.
It's incredible,
I'm so glad you found a way to stay in it,
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I was, building out what we were doing at VxP now while I was running the wholesaler. So this was a nice stepping off point for sure.
Maybe that's why we are friends, because I found a way to stay in the business too without. Well, good. Well, Biscuit, do you have anything else to add to ask Bud? No, you're just gonna sit there behind the tripod. Okay.
Well, what are we? We're a couple months out from Summit, too, right?
Well, what a nice segue. What a nice segue.
We will
Yes,
be
sir.
together then again.
Yes, we will.
The
Sure.
hurricane is not going to be a problem at all. It's going to hit on the
It's
east side.
hitting on the other side.
side, yep.
Yeah, on the Tampa Bay area. Man, I hope those guys are batting down because it looks like another bad one. Yeah, but I spoke with my guy at the Breakers today to talk about AV, and he was like, we're still fucking scared over here. We're completely across the Florida Peninsula, but it's still big. It's Category 5. So
hopefully it calms down like what it's expected to do, and then it will be
it's
not as bad.
I don't know, man. Tampa Bay, I've been there a few times. It just looks like it's below sea level on a normal day. It's just real flat and marshy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a friend in Michigan, not from the industry, but a friend from Michigan who was rebuilding. So he bought a property, tore down the home there, and then is building a new one all up to new specs.
Mm-hmm.
And the new specs are that you have to build it up 12 feet off of water level or water line or whatever we want to call it. I'm not an engineer. I just sub here.
Right.
But when they did that, I got a picture of it, and his main floor is higher than his neighbor's roofs.
Oh my gosh.
Because they're grandfathered in as
Right.
the old,
Yeah, see
code.
this towering.
Yes. Yes. So he sits on his back patio with his pool and everything and literally looks down on his neighbors.
Right. Wow. I mean, we're sitting in San Antonio, Texas right now, which I've always said, it's a great place to live. There's no very few tornadoes. There's no hurricanes. There's no earthquakes. But we're 300 miles from the Gulf, and so was Asheville. Was 300 miles from the Atlantic. I mean, is that normal? It would never occurred to me in a million years that Asheville would be destroyed like that by a hurricane. Did it you?
Not one bit. It's wild.
It is wild, man.
And it's going to be years
Yeah.
until that's put back together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I'd love to sit here and just bullshit with you for another 6 hours.
Well, we're going to go have dinner, hopefully.
Yeah, I was thinking. So, we can go. Here's some options. Here's some options for you.
You're the local, bro. We had a client that revoked my privileges from picking dinners.
Really?
So we were in their market, made a couple questionable
Now, why?
decisions.
Why?
We may or may not have gone to a ramen place that was
Okay, let me pick.
yes. So you're in
ramen.
charge of the food. I'm in charge of the just tagging along in the bill.
I
and
forget that you're
fun.
such a millennial. Ramen. You're in my town. I got the bill, so we could go. We could go to the country club, which is across the street, and use my minimum. Or
That doesn't sound like that much fun.
yeah, I mean, do you like Mexican food?
Love.
Because we got some Mexican joints
I'm
around
sure
here.
you do.
All right. Well, we'll talk about
We'll
that.
have to marry up with the taco cartel we have in Battle Creek and see
Yeah.
what the pros and cons are.
Yeah. Well, I think
That is a challenge accepted,
I think
bro.
San Antonio's got you beat there, buddy.
I don't know. Norma's pretty good at the taco cartel.
my
San
gosh.
Francisco #2. There's two of these things.
There's
in Battle
two
Creek.
of them,
There's
huh?
two of them, and they're not very far away.
Okay. We'll see about that. Biscuit, anything to add? Oh, okay. Nothing as usual.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having
man.
me, Harry. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being on.
Yep.
We'll see you
Love
next
bro.
time.
Yep.
Ciao. Good.